on the line, does a tremendous job covering the Eagles for the Inquirer, has really become a filmsman this year, and you should always experience the new look of Inquirer Sports, where fans can read, watch, and listen to their favorite reporters and columnists. Go to Inquirer.com/sports. Mr. E.J. Smith on the Comcast Business Hotline. How you doing today, E.J.?
Oh, well, Tyrone, I've never been called a filmsman before, but, I'll take it. I've been called worse, that's for sure.
Nah, you're becoming a filmsman. Nah, it's become both on your social media and on the Inquirer.com/sports. It's becoming a go-to thing for me each and every week, where you go through and break everything down as a true filmsman. And to start off, I have to ask you, what was the most impressive part of that victory? We've talked about things on the offensive side, the defensive side, the quarterback, the coaching. For you as a guy that covers the team all year and really breaks down the film, what was the most impressive part of the Eagles' victory yesterday afternoon?
Yeah, I honestly think the response from the offense is what really stands out to me. You can get into some of the more granular things about that. The offensive line obviously had an unbelievable game. It's hard to take Lane Johnson for granted, at how dominant he is, the ability to play, one-on-one against T.J. Watt for most of the game. But realistically, when you zoom out, the talk all week going into this game was whether the passing game was going to be able to get back on track after that Panthers performance. And, for them to come out and do what they did against a very talented Pittsburgh Steelers defense, I get that the Steelers defense sets up in a way that the Eagles did have matchup advantages on the outside. Obviously the Steelers use a lot of man coverage, a lot of single high safeties and everything like that. But still, the fact that, they were able to respond in the way that they did, I think that speaks a lot to where the team is at this point in the season. You want them to be peaking at this point in the year, and I think that the way that Jalen Hurts played, the way the offense played, kind of gives you a window into what this offensive ceiling could be. If everything is clicking the way that, at least in the passing game, it was on Sunday.
How big was the defense early on in this game? When you really think about it, there were 2 turnovers early on in this game. This game could have gone either way, and the Eagles' defense stood on their heads.
Yeah, I mean, obviously after the Hurts fumble, you're wondering if the Steelers are going to march down the field and score there. And then, the DeJean fumble even more. That one, I mean, they were really backed up. The fact that they were able to hold them to 3 points after those 2 fumbles was a really big turning point in the game, obviously. And, it's almost like, I mentioned, don't take Lane Johnson for granted. It was almost like, you kind of almost expected the Eagles defense to have a really dominant performance, because that's kind of what they've shown all year. I think, it's another thing that's they're peaking at the right time of the year. It seems like the pass rush, obviously Nolan Smith has taken a couple of strides here, I would say, from where he was at early in the season. So, you're getting really high-level performances from some guys that you just wouldn't have expected to be playing at this high of a level. I remember Cooper DeJean was a big talking point coming to this game because of the way that he played against Adam Thielen last week. But honestly, the fact that this guy's playing at a Pro Bowl level as a rookie is really, speaks volumes, and obviously Quinyon Mitchell too. So, I think that the fact that they've got so many young guys kind of playing just way above what the expectations would have been for them, I think that this is a group that you can really rely on, and again, they kind of showed that again against the Steelers.
EJ, you mentioned already other teams kept 2 high safeties and they ran the ball a lot with Saquon. The Steelers did a little bit more to sell out to stop the run, and they decided to pass, and they passed the ball well. If you had to guess, how do you think which approach do you think opponents are more likely to take the rest of this regular season and go into the postseason? Sell out to stop Saquon, or continue to be wary of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith? Which one do you think the Eagles end up seeing more of the rest of the way?
Well, I think it ebbs and flows. I think some of it is just some defenses are going to come out and they're going to say, we're going to do what we do. We're going to stick to the philosophy. And, that varies each week. But, I think that you're kind of seeing the ebb and flow now where, they had such a dominant stretch running the football. The teams are starting to really sell out to stop that. Teams are really, 26 is the first number on the game plan probably for some of these defenses. And, that puts you in a dangerous position because 11-6 can really gash you as well. And obviously we've seen that. We saw that against the Steelers. We've seen that at points this year. I think that was what made the Saquon signing, such an interesting proposition even going into the season was the Eagles used to see a lot of 2 high coverage looks, early in Jalen Hurts' career. Single high coverage looks early in Jalen Hurts' career. And, he's seen less and less of those because of the fact that they've been able to do so much damage when teams do match up man coverage over the top. So, it really is. It's kind of like I said, kind of like the cat and mouse game, the push-pull of the NFL. I think, you probably are seeing sort of like the overcorrection to how dominant the run game has been. And that's where the Eagles offense, that's where the ceiling can really be, is like the fact that they can take advantage of both looks. If you want to load the box, they've got really good receivers who can win one-on-one matchups, and Jalen Hurts, when he's willing to take those shots down the field, can, really make you pay for, I guess, expending too many resources in the box. And then if you want to go the other way, then you have Saquon, who can run against light boxes and has been really effective both before and after contact this season. So, again, that's why I'm talking about, like, the ceiling of this offense. I think we're really starting to see them, kind of punish teams no matter what they do.
I think punishing a team is exactly what comes to my mind. I'm watching this game yesterday. Whenever the Eagles got into the second level, whether it be with a receiver or with a running back, these defensive backs want no part of trying to tackle these guys. Am I right? Is that just being physically beaten down?
Yeah, I mean, they have their skill position group is probably one of, if not the most difficult to tackle in the NFL. We've heard Saquon Barkley talk about A.J. Brown being built the same way that he is and kind of playing in a similar way. A.J. is not too dissimilar to some of the great running backs of the past in terms of his build. He's not the tallest. Obviously, he's not the skinniest guy. So, yeah, I mean, when you look at A.J. Brown, you look at Saquon Barkley, even Jalen Hurts can be punishing in the run game at times. So, they're a really difficult team to tackle. The offensive line is kind of an extension of that. They don't seem like a fun team to play, especially when everything's clicking. You hear those stories in years past about how teams would always lose games after they played the 49ers because they had that physical brand of football. I feel like the Eagles are starting to get a reputation like that too, where you really do. You're going to have to pay a toll every time you play them.
It's funny you say that, EJ. I talked to a guy who covers the Panthers, and he thought they had nothing left physically against Dallas after playing the Eagles last week. It's funny you bring that up. We're speaking with EJ Smith. He does a tremendous job covering the Eagles for the Inquirer. You go to inquirer.com/sports. There was a little incident late in the game with Jalen Carter, and Nick Sirianni was fiery, but it ended up being diffused. And we kept hearing last season maybe that these situations were not being diffused. Is this a sign of growth from the head coach, who obviously had his team ready to play, but when there was some drama, it's something that was flared up and then it didn't escalate, and apparently it seemed by the end of the game they were back being good again?
I watched the whole thing unfold with my binoculars, actually, on the sideline yesterday. I think the broadcast caught a good amount of it. Jalen Carter kind of walked past Nick. Nick was obviously pretty angry with him and, kind of getting after him a little bit. Nick did. He went back to the bench to kind of get after him some more, and Clint Hurt got in between them. Dom DeSandro was there. And I think that, the reason why it didn't really blow up more than I think it could have was because of the fact that, and I'm not sure if the broadcast showed this, after a few minutes, both of them cooled off, and Jalen Carter actually went and found Nick on the sideline, and they ended up hugging. It seemed like they kind of squashed whatever was going on. So, I think that's a sign. I think it kind of, also, traces back to all of what we heard from A.J. Brown about, the willingness to say, the hard truths or have the uncomfortable conversations with his teammates. I think, this isn't a team that's walking on eggshells, and that was something we heard a little bit from last year. I think, all of this does indicate maybe some growth from last year in terms of being able to handle things behind the scenes. And, I don't think it's always a bad thing for a coach to be fired up at a player and, for an assistant coach to kind of make sure that he's protecting his guys. I think, obviously, it's got to be within, the scope of being respectful to the head coach. And, yeah, obviously Jalen Carter made a mistake, but I think they all probably would acknowledge that, the day after. I think, it's kind of an illustration of, those personality dynamics at play. I didn't think it was that big of a deal, especially because I saw Jalen Carter kind of went and found Nick Sirianni to sort of address it and put it to bed.
All right, I got to ask you, there were a lot of little injuries going on yesterday. A lot of guys coming on and off the field, a lot of ankle stuff, it looked like. Is this any concern for the Eagles, or is it just kind of, okay, we'll just put a Band-Aid on it and we'll move on?
Yeah, I think the Landon Dickerson one is going to be something to keep an eye on. Obviously, he didn't come back in the game, and, you never really know with those types of injuries. But, the rest of them, obviously Saquon said he was dealing with, he said a little something after the game. I mean, the fact that Saquon was kind of in and out in the fourth quarter makes me think he's probably fine. I think that this is the point in the season, though, obviously they're still in contention for the 1 seed. That they have to take care of business the next 3 weeks to give themselves a realistic chance at it. But I do think that you kind of can start looking a little bit further forward and maybe think about managing, especially Saquon. He's got so many touches this season. So I know some people might disagree, but I think, managing these guys, making sure that they're not burnt out by the time that they get to the playoffs might be a good idea in these coming weeks. I imagine you probably hope that you can do it naturally. You get out to early leads and you can rest these guys in the fourth quarter. But no, for the most part, I don't think any of these injuries, we'll see Wednesday, on the injury report, but Landon Dickerson's the one that I would probably be the most, keeping an eye on going into this practice week. But in general, I think that it is going to be good for them to try and, I don't want to say take their foot off the gas these next three weeks, but still pick their spots when they can get these guys a little bit of a break. Because, they still realistically they'd probably hope 2 more months of football to play.
Yeah, and this is where maybe, EJ, that early bye week, which at the time was a blessing due to all the injuries then, you're now playing how many straight weeks of football. So, yeah. Really appreciate all the great work you do over at the Inquirer. We appreciate you coming on, EJ. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. That was EJ Smith on the Comcast Business Hotline. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching. Really appreciate it. If you want more of this content, make sure you like and subscribe. And you can do that kind of over here if you want more of the best show ever.